Welcome everyone to today's expertise networking session. Today is going to be a very special session with our guest speaker, Ron Siahpoosh, founder of Jovitude. Ron is going to be revealing the science behind breakthrough results and peak performance. I must say that Ron is a contact of Sunny, who most of you already know, and he speaks so highly of Ron. So I am personally looking forward to Ron's session. Ron actually spent many years, more than 25 years, studying industries and different countries, as well as like performance studies. So what he's going to be sharing with us today is drawn from all these studies that he's done throughout these years. I mean, I think all of us want to know what really separates exceptional performance from the rest of us. And especially in the age of AI, I think AI doesn't give us a choice anymore. We have to be excellent in everything that we do. Well, Ron, welcome to our community, and
Thank you.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Safa. And I wanted to introduce, I have a colleague of mine, Joaquin Mendoza, who's also on the call. And I was telling Safa before the call, Joaquin is a former client of mine at ZS, where I spent most of my career in. That's actually where Sunny was too. He is now a client of Jovitude. He owns a company in Mexico and is a client of ours. And he is hopefully going to become a future partner of mine too. So we've gone through this journey together. So he's here to both observe and also contribute if we get into breakout sessions. Few quick comments. So just in terms of my background and what I do. My background is for the past nearly 35 years working with mainly large organizations, some mid-sized organizations too, helping them drive transformation. And worked more than 25 industries in 40 countries. And the thing you notice when you work with a variety of different organizations is the big variation that exists in performance. I mean, when you look at some organizations, they're performing at this level, some organizations here. Within teams, some teams are up here, some teams are down here. Even within individuals within teams, the variation is significant. Even when you look at people individually day by day, some days they're performing at much higher levels than other days. And you see that both from a performance perspective, which Safa talked about, but also even from a sense of fulfillment and enjoyment of the day and things like that. And so I became very interested in what is it that makes a difference, and what is it that makes some people, organizations, and teams more consistently performing at high levels. And so with a group of researchers, we looked at studies, research. We ultimately looked at 6,000 studies of performance and really looked at the best of the best. What do the top 2% do differently? And I'll share today an idea that came out of that and how that can be, anyone can operationalize it. This is really the only part of the conversation where you're going to hear me talk all the time. Like I'm going to ask some questions and we're going to get this to be more interactive. But the one caveat that I want people to keep me honest on is that virtually all the work that I do, 19, is mainly with organizations that are either large organizations or some mid-size. So this is not the typical group for me. So this is why I wanted to be interactive and you guys lead me toward, in the right direction. But hopefully what I'm going to share is going to be very relevant for this group too, because it's ultimately at the end of the day, to me, whether you're an organization, whether you're a team, whether you're an individual, there is this opportunity by doing some things that you control to drive substantially better performance and fulfillment. So with that, I'm going to again jump in and give some background, and then I'm going to stop and ask a question from the group and get some participation from this group here. So with that background, I'm going to share a few slides with you as background, and then we're going to jump into the more the conversation. Very good. So this is basically what Jovitude does. So just to give you a sense what our mission is and what my focus is on today is just how can we transform our results while greatly enjoying the journey? I mean, to me, you're going to hear me talk a lot about results transformation and enjoyment, not as balances, but as things that go hand in hand. And so the thing that I said before was that we looked at all the research, the studies, and to say, so what is it that drives top 2% performance and fulfillment? What is it that when people are performing at that level, they're doing differently? And ultimately, everything that I'm going to be talking about here can be summed up in one idea. And so we distilled the research into this idea that says, it's based on this very basic concept that says, we don't control every aspect of our results. There are a lot of things that impact our results, what goes outside of us, what's happening in the economy, what's happening with clients. But we can always pursue being A+ in the standards that we control that drive our results. Right? So ultimately, the foundational idea is this idea of being A+ in what we control. So if you think about on the right-hand side of the page, we want to create A+ achievements with our results. What we can ultimately, at the end of the day, while we don't control every aspect of what goes on in there, we can pursue being A+ in the key things that we control. And when we think about, so what is it that we control? They fall into these three big buckets that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. The first relates to how we see the future. Right? So we control our ability to decide the future, and I'll talk about what's important there. I'm going to shape the future that we want. That's fully in our control. So we can take a vision of the future and turn it into A+. We control how we turn vision into results. That's execution, and we'll talk about that and what we control. And ultimately, we control how we keep getting better every day. We're not going to be perfect A+. I'm going to talk about this more. A+ does not mean perfection. In fact, perfection is one of the biggest enemies of being A+, because, but I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But this idea that we can keep getting better and can control how we get better on driving A+ growth. And so the entire idea that I'm going to share is based on what you see right now on this slide, the simple idea that says, if we want to become A+ in what we achieve, the key thing is let's identify what it is that we control and just pursue being A+, both in terms of how we see the future, in terms of how we turn our vision into results with execution, and in terms of A+ growth. And so with that, I've got a question for the group. We're going to play a little game here where one more thing before I get. There's one more thing that comes out of this, which is ultimately is that when we do this, we also create A+ enjoyment. And the reason for that, and you can even look back on it in your own lives, even in your own day-to-days. When we feel in control, when we feel that we are not a victim of circumstance, when we feel that I can do things, I know what it is that I control that drive results, and I can focus on excelling in that. The beauty of this is that we not only achieve results that are significantly above ordinary, but we enjoy the process more. So that's going to be the theme of what I'm going to talk about today. So now the game and the question, which says, if it's this simple, right? If all we have to do is be A+ in what we control, and then we'll get A+ in what we achieve, why wouldn't we consistently pursue A+ in what we control? So what are the we're going to do a little bit of the for those in the US. I think some other countries have this Family Feud game. We're going to do a little bit of a game here. What are the top 5 reasons do you think that we are not always we're not consistently pursuing A plus in what we control if we know that that drives A plus achievement? What do people think? We can just
I'd
shout them
say
out, by the way.
I'd say circumstance outside of our
Which,
control.
yeah, like things happen that we don't control, right?
Mhm.
Oops.
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus. Wait, I think distractions was one of them. Lack of focus. So things
Perception
happen,
that
distractions happen. Sorry, go ahead.
perception
I heard
Procrastination.
procrastination can be something too, right? Like we just can't get ourselves to. It's just hard to sustain sometimes. What else? Any other?
I
I'd
put
say
down
excuses.
laziness.
Yeah, I think that's part of this too, kind of your distracting, lack of consistency. Any others? And I'll kind of
Our own
Lack of
emotions.
planning.
Sorry?
Lack of planning.
Yeah, lack of planning. I'll kind of relate this to lack of clarity, right? Yeah, I mean, if we sometimes the issue is we don't even know what it is that we
I
control, right? So
I would add limiting beliefs.
yeah, great job. Lack of belief, right? I mean, that's a big one, right? And there are others too, right? So if I just quickly, we can just you guys all mentioned these. Lack of clarity is a big one, right? And lack of clarity is if we don't know what it is, like it's easy to say be A plus in your standards, but if I don't know exactly what those standards are that drive my results, and I think someone said planning and just being prepared for that, we're not going to do it. This second one is huge. I want to spend a little bit of time on the second one before we get into how this works. What do you guys think when we talk about feeling hard, not being enjoyable? I think you guys talked about it in a lot of different contexts. This point, what does that mean to you when you see that? Like being A plus in what we control feels hard. Feels like it might be too intense. It might be too hard.
Yeah, Clark, please.
I think we can't control our own emotions.
Yeah,
I think it's to do with lack of belief in the self as well.
Yeah. So all that like I think the not controlling emotion is the big one, right? Like you can have all the best feelings in the world, and then that day you're stressed, things are happening, and it's just hard to follow through. And Rebecca.
Yeah, I would also say lack of belief or lack of clarity can do it that it feels hard because you're maybe not doing what you should be doing. Like you're a little bit behind, like beside the target, and that's not enjoyable.
Yeah. So all of these, so the lack of clarity is basically if I'm not specific about something, it's follow through. The enjoyable one I want to talk about a little bit because no one mentioned it, but I'll say it, this idea of A plus, because A plus can be inspirational, but it can be scary. And the place that it gets so this idea of enjoyable. So we do a lot of top performer interviews. So we've done it through the years from CEOs to mid-level managers to salespeople to all different levels and a whole host of different roles from sales to marketing to HR. And we ask people, what is it that you attribute your top performance to? And the answer that we get more than any other answer is a variation of I love what I do. I mean, a variation of I love what I do, which basically points to this idea of enjoyability of something. And if we're doing something and we're not enjoying. So that is oftentimes that is one driver of us not being able to really be A plus in what we control. But then the other thing is perfectionism. When I say perfectionism in the context of A plus and what we control, any thoughts in terms of what that may mean, Carl?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because first of all, you haven't defined yet what is A plus. So what would a person who's enjoying themselves define as A plus? I mean, a lot of people produce mediocre work in a big corporate, and that's regarded as more than good enough. And then there are people who produce better than that. But I guess the ultimate is perfection. But, in social media, they'll tell you that perfection is your biggest enemy. So I hear so enjoyable, A plus. What is A plus?
So I'll come to that in a second, but you brought up the perfectionist idea, which I wanted someone to say, which you brought up, which is what it is not, what is the opposite of, is perfectionism. So A plus does not mean being perfect. In fact, A plus is the enemy of perfect, because when we say A plus in what we control, by definition, what are we saying? We're saying if I can control it, I'm giving my best. That's the simplest way to describe what A plus and what we control means. It means that if I don't control something, by definition, I don't control it. But if I do control it and I know what it is, I'm giving my best in it. Now, why is perfectionism so destructive? Because perfectionism is one of the most destructive things that there is. When you're a perfectionist, you basically look at the concept of giving your best, and instead of looking at something as giving your best, you look at it as being perfect. And what happens is one of two things happen to perfectionists. Either a minority of them, in spite of their perfectionists, they just keep pushing themselves to be perfect, and they're inspired and they go out there and create successes. But they're miserable doing that because they're perfectionists. They're always looking at, what they did wrong. Most of them, what perfectionism happens is perfectionism creates fear, and fear creates a lack of trying. And a lack of trying basically creates poor results. So to Carl, to the point that you brought up, the way that we're going to define A plus and what we control for the rest of today is very simply saying we're pursuing our best, with pursue being the key word. So if I can control something, I'm going to pursue my best in it. Pursuing my best means some days I may not achieve great results. Some days I may achieve better results. Some days I will achieve not as good results. But I'll go through a process right now with you. And the process that I'm going to share with you, what it's going to do is that it creates a framework around this idea of giving our best that makes it dramatically more likely that in most days, on average, you create much better results. Your best means much more. But it's very important as we go through this that if you have perfectionist tendencies in you, for this conversation, put them aside, because perfectionism, I'm going to really keep putting the case that perfectionism is an enemy of performance. Does not help great performance. Perfectionism creates fear because you're scared that you're going to fail, and then people don't follow through. So long answer, but Carl, it was a very good question. But I wanted to bring that in as background before we jump into to details.
Sorry, so if you look at people like Fortune 500 CEOs or Michael Phelps, what they call best is something, or Elon Musk. What these people call best is an unextreme, but as you're saying, we should ignore for the discussion of today.
No, I'm not saying ignore them. I'm saying we're going to define, each person is going to define, and I'm going to show you how to do that.
Okay.
Each person is going to define what best means for them. There may be someone here sitting down and saying, my best is Michael Phelps. right? Like that is my A plus standard is Michael Phelps. I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. every morning, do what Michael Phelps says. Well, I'm going to be Elon Musk working 7 days a week, 18 hours sleeping under my desk. But someone else says, my best is putting 4 hours of work here and then spending 5 hours going on it. Like whatever it's right for you. And this is where this first point is really important, in that ultimately you have to be crystal clear about what best means for you. And for a group like this, it's a little bit different than when we typically work. I so with an organization. At the organizational level, people come together, and as a group, we define what A plus looks for us. This group is different in that each of you will individually do that, but your A pluses, Carl's versus Edward versus Ani's versus Rebecca, versus Safa. You guys may have very different definitions of A plus, but the key thing is don't make it just go to chance. Define what A plus is. Like, this is my standard, and then pursue it. And if you don't get it, don't beat yourself up. Learn from it and move on to the next day. Do the same thing. That's the idea ultimately. Any other questions before I want to share? So how do we do this?
Yes. And how do you reconcile that with the vision of the company? Because there are many different styles of leadership, of having and defining your A plus. But in doing so, you might well not be aligned with the vision of the company. I've worked with extremely results-oriented companies, for example. There are others who are more process-oriented or more people-oriented and so on. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so I'll answer, and then I'll maybe Joaquin, if you have a comment to make on that too, because you're living the process yourself with your team. So at the company level, things are not quite as flexible as I mentioned it, right? At the company level, what I tell clients when we start this process with them is that there's going to be good news and bad news. And the good news is that most of your people, and we see this in research and studies, and in terms of how people react, most of your people are not only going to elevate their standards, but they're going to really enjoy themselves substantially more as they do that. We do a lot of before and after testing to validate that. But what I also tell them is that for some people, and this gets to both, further what you said, but also, Carl, what you said in terms of some people just want mediocre performance. For some people, they're going to opt out, or they're going to be opted out, where you're going to look and say, like, they're just not willing to go and be A plus in their standards, because the standards for a company are different from an individual. We all have to agree what those standards have to be. And that group may be more comfortable in a place where it doesn't require A plus standards, and they can be mediocre. Joaquin, do you want anything that you would add to that?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. As Ron mentioned, I'm currently a client of Ron. I have my own business here in Mexico. I have 100 people and about 20 salespeople. And I think at the beginning, when I was working on this methodology, it sounded like the A plus, every person was going to choose their own standard, meaning one person would tell me, Joaquin, I'm going to make 10 calls a day. Somebody else was going to tell me, I'm going to make 5 calls a day. And everybody's going to choose their own. But really the way this works, and I think in the next slides it will be more clear, is that as a company, we had a sales goal that was non-negotiable. But then you have really, as a leader, 2 paths. One is just telling people you have to grow by 10%. Here are some tools, and I'll see you next week. But really what we did is, via client surveys and different methodologies, is we figure out really what was driving growth, that it's in our control. So for example, responding to emails in a certain time frame. Now the A plus standard, and what was individualized and we came up as a group, is what is an A plus standard in terms of responding to a client email? Is it 1 hour? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 2 hours? The standard was set. The client told us, I value responding to an email. But as a group, we came up as a standard. We look at our historical research, etc. So it's not really that everybody's going to choose their own and everybody's going to go on a different path. There's going to be a vision. There's going to be a goal. But the standard and what we can control as a group, we come up with it.
Yeah, and Joaquin says so. The word that was important, which was as a group, like we call it top down, bottom up. And again, we're not talking about organizations. I want to focus more on the individual because I don't know how relevant the organization is for everyone here. But just so you know, from an organizational perspective, there's a top down, which is there's some analytics involved in terms of identifying, okay, what does A+ look like? And to Joaquin, you can actually look at data and really understand what drives. If I want to, let's say, drive sales growth by 10% higher. These are analytically proven things that drive that. But then the bottom part as a group is very important, where Joaquin, and it's the same thing for all clients. It's not like Joaquin went to his team and said, guys, here's our new A+ standards. We shared the data and they came up with it as a group together. And this as a group is important too, because Carl alluded to it, right? When you're in an organization where one person is mediocre and one person is not, and one person is this, that creates a lot of psychological challenges too. But the excitement level, the energy when you identify what does A+ look like for you is big. I'm going to move to the next slide because I want to make this real in terms of how the process that Joaquin describes actually works. And again, whether you're looking at it from an organizational standpoint so that there is more team dynamics involved in terms of identifying A+, we have to get it together, or whether you're looking at it individually for yourself. Like, how is it? This is a group of experts, so I'll share some examples here that we're going to customize for that. How do I, as an expert, drive more business for myself? How do I, as an expert, get to know more for myself? And how do we identify standards there? So we had talked about these 3 core A+ standards. We talked about vision, which is how we see our future. We talked about execution, and we talked about growth. And I'm going to spend most of my time on vision, and I'm going to share an example with you, and then hopefully we can work together on this too. So I'll go relatively quick here, but the idea here, but I'm going to share. I'm going to get into detail here. This idea that when we think about the vision of the future, the quarter and the week are especially important. And the idea of the quarter is, what are not just my goals for the quarter, but Joaquin alluded to it, saying, what are the standards that will drive these growths that I control, that I can get crystal clear about? And not 20 different things, but 2 things, maximum 3 things. What are the 2 or 3 things that if I want to, let's say, grow my business by 5%, what are the standards that drive that? And all of that tied to the longer term objectives, and then translating that to the week. So translating that to how will we win the week? Now, in our corporate work, which is 99.9% of what we do, the idea of the week is we coming together as a team, we coming together as individuals. What are the goals that we set for this week? There are progress review meetings that go with 4 questions. I'm going to share that with you. But let me ask a question from the group. Why do you think the research points so much to the quarter and the week as particularly important? We could have said year and month, for example. What is it about the quarter and the week that make it especially important? We're going to get to execution the day and shorter times too. But what is it about, if I'm thinking about the future, not today, what is it about the quarter and the week that make it especially important? What do you guys think?
Yeah, Rebecca, please.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca, I didn't see you.
That's okay. I mean, it's more of a SMART goal, isn't it? It's more measurable. So if you can win the week and win the quarter, then everything else follows on naturally, I would say.
Yeah, but there are time periods that if you do that, it'll take care of the others. That's great. Carl?
Well, the company itself, even the CEO of the company has quarterly reports. So everybody, I mean, in most large corporates, they're driven by quarterly reports. So everybody wants the quarter.
But so that is true, but it's kind of like I'm looking at it a little bit backwards. Like, why do they have quarterly reports? Assume that didn't even exist. Like, why? What is it about the quarter and the week that are special by themselves? Alfredo. Oh, you're on mute, Alfredo.
This is more about working on the Pareto, the really important things, and really having focus on what you want to achieve. I mean, when you put this, it turns into the agile system using in process in project management, where you set up a specific objective, the most important ones based on the Pareto, and then you start tripping them down to a weekly and daily basis.
Yeah, no, very, very, very good. So you make it big and you break it into smaller pieces. Hemant.
So I think you started your presentation by saying that in the research that you looked at, most of the successful guys enjoyed their work. Okay. Which means that they enjoyed because they were successful. And I guess if you break it down into week and quarter, and if you achieve those small wins, then probably that will give you a dopamine hit, and you'll probably get on with achieving more and more.
Yeah, no, that's very good too. So at the end of it, it's when you think about the quarter and the week, and everyone alluded to these ideas. I mean, think about both of them, right? So the quarter is long enough for us to be able to do something with. Like think about right now, it's like May 20th today. So 3 months from now, end of August, let's say. If you think about the end of August, everyone in this room, if they do something different from now till the end of August that they can control and say, okay, I'm going to raise my standard in this one area this much. The end of August is a time period where you can achieve something significant, but it's also short enough to not allow dilly-dallying, right? So you guys mentioned that there is that from a corporate perspective, you have quarterly reports, et cetera. There's a reason that has come to being. And so the quarter is a very important time period that everyone should be looking at in a very systematic way, whether they're part of a corporate environment or they're not. And then from a week perspective, then when you translate that to the week, that creates, again, we can achieve something significant this week, but it's short enough that you can very quickly get reactions in terms of results to see what worked and what didn't work. But I want to take what Hemant did and kind of set up from in terms of enjoyment and execution, and talk about enjoyment a little bit, because part of enjoyment is exactly what you said, where yes, you create results and you get better results, we're going to enjoy ourselves more. I mean, that's obvious. But the research actually is also very clear that the opposite is true, where when you enjoy yourself, you produce better results. And so when we break down our execution idea, it breaks into this idea of win the day and win the block. And the way that I'll describe it at the end of the day is to be able to translate what we did on the vision side into blocks of time, and then basically put everything that we have into, we can always win this hour. We can always win this next 2 hours. And what does winning mean? Winning doesn't mean perfection in terms of results. Winning means I'm going to pursue my best in two things. Pursue my best in excellence and pursue my best in enjoyment. And someone talked about you mentioned Michael Phelps and Elon Musk and these guys. Like I'm not saying that their standards are the standards that we should be following. I'm actually say probably for 99.9999% of the population, they actually should not be. But the reason that they set these standards, at the end of the day, when they're doing what they're doing, they have associated enjoyment to it and love to it. And so we can do a little bit of experiment for the next 20 minutes that we have, which is tell yourself that for these 20 minutes, you're going to pursue, regardless of what you can't control. The speaker could be the best in the world could be the worst in the world. The topic could be the best, could be whatever it is. What you don't control, you don't control. But if you're typically in these types of meetings, you're an 8 in terms of how you're going to enjoy yourself. Pursue being a 10. If you're usually a 10, pursue being a 12. So pursue elevating your enjoyment, your energy, your curiosity, and see what happens. Because what happens is, and you see this with high-performing organizations, with sporting organizations, et cetera, that where when we actively enjoy the process, we drive significantly better results. And in fact, I'll send you guys all the kind of the tools we have for win the quarter, win the week, if we don't get time to go through all the details. So that's going to be valuable. But if you remember one thing from this, it's this idea that says in every block of time, I can pursue exceptional excellence. I can pursue exceptional enjoyment at the same time. If you just take that one idea that creates more wins for you block by block by block, and that drives significantly better results. So everyone can say next 20 minutes, we're going to pursue as much more enjoyment than we typically do. Very good. I see that. And then the last part is A+ growth. And A+ growth is about getting better. And it's about continually improving ourselves. And this is where these 3 things that come together. And they relate to what people said at the very beginning, where people said, well, some days I don't, or we don't, or people don't follow through because maybe emotionally they're not there. Sometimes they do because someone used the word lazy. Someone they do because the belief is not there. But there are all these different reasons. And there are these 3 forces that are extremely powerful for us to control. And these 3 forces often make the big difference between performance at this level and down, driving a better vision and execution. One relates to communication and self-talk, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way we communicate if we're leaders to our teams, both in terms of results and standards and our ability to be A+. So one of the biggest determinants of whether we are able to pursue A+ standards is whether we tell ourselves we can or not. And so the quality of our communication, self-talk is one. The second is how we deal with problems. We don't have time in this session to go into a detailed problem-solving framework, but this idea of very simply being fact-based and then just being decisive. But putting aside techniques, just this idea that says how we deal with problems, whether I deal with it as a source of stress or I deal with it as an input for improvement, is a big differentiator, again, between success and those who are not kind of performing at those levels. And then how we measure ourselves. This could be a tricky one for many of you, in that when we're in a corporate environment, that's made in some ways easy for us because there are measurement processes that are in place. And when Joaquin talks about the system that he's putting in place with the help of his team together, they've all agreed and raised their hands on this is what we're going to be measuring, this is what we're going to be tracking, this is how we're going to meet together one-on-one, here's how we're going to be doing things. And so how you decide to measure is a key driver of success, because what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So that's whether you do things, what I recommend to people is whether you're working with a coach, whether you're working with each other, whether you're one of the beauties of a process teams, things like this can be pushing yourself, but this idea of measurement becomes key. But ultimately, this combination of communication creates this psychological power, problem solving creates this decision-making power, and measurement creates this analytic power. And combining those together becomes very powerful in terms of elevating the wins and driving impact. So let me stop here. I'm cognizant of time, but I want to take the direction into where the team prefers to take this. I have an example of what A+ vision looks like, but we can also discuss any topic here too. So I'll let people decide what's best and useful. I will be sending the example for everyone, so you'll have the example in any case, whether we cover it or not. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to go through what Joaquin described, which is, again, when you think about these three buckets, these are the things we can control. A plus vision is about how you design this future for yourself that goes beyond, I want to achieve these results, but it gets into what are the standards that are going to help me achieve these results. A plus execution is around how block by block I turn that into results. And A plus growth is about how I keep improving. What we're going to focus on is the top left-hand side, A plus vision right now. So I'm going to share an example of how this works. I'm going to just jump into an example. So again, we're going to share this. But the idea here is we have this process we call the victory blueprint process. And the idea of the victory blueprint is in a corporate setting, it's we get together as a team, as an organization, and create this blueprint for success that ties not just to what we want to achieve. That's a very common thing. Everyone does goal setting, so that's nothing new there. But it ties to two other things that are very important and few do very well. And those two things, one is being crystal clear about the standards that will drive us. But then last but as important is what you see in blue, which is the emotion that all of this creates. What Joaquin didn't get into detail, but is that the idea that when they've gone through this process, defining what your North Star is, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, that's the process. That's important. It's important to put down on paper, write down exactly what is it that's different about what you do, what defines you. But what really takes it to the next level is creating the belief about it. And that belief is ultimately what matters, not writing it out on a piece of paper. As we're thinking about our goals, writing down your goals, that's important, and everyone does that. But it's really building the energy behind it that's important. And then identifying the standards that ultimately this is what we control that drive those goals. The key thing there, that's what drives confidence. So let me go through an example here, and then we can see how it works. So in the example here on top in the red, this is the North Star. This is the mission. And the only thing that matters in creating this and in putting this in place and kind of thinking about, you probably will have some versions of this, is to make sure that it's, first of all, crystal clear. It's something that's ingrained in you. So if someone wakes you up at 2 a.m., you can say that with the same exact words every single time because it's just so fundamentally in you. If you're part of a team, and you're doing this for a team, then every member of the team, the same thing calls. You wake them up at 2 a.m., they'll say the same exact words because we're all aligned, we all agree this is what we're going for. And then there's this belief in it. There's this conviction, there's a certainty that says, this is who we are, this is what we're going after. But this is just the foundation. This is the quick part. Where this becomes really powerful is tying this to the quarter. Because if you're not tying this to the quarter, you have a fancy, nice thing that you're putting and it sounds good, but it's not operationalized. And after a while, it becomes meaningless because it's not doing anything. And so ultimately tying it to the quarter, like in this business, in this example here, it's build a whatever dollar executive transition advisory business. Here's exactly what we're doing. We're going to do this quarter. 26 and 27, while becoming a go-to advisor for senior executives navigating major career transitions. Might be right, might not be relevant for others. It's what's right for you. But then you tie this to goals and standards for the month. And this is the key thing here. So like in this example here, the person said, if I want to drive whatever the dollars was here, well, I have to drive this much dollar for my existing business. That part of it is the everyone does part. Or actually, I shouldn't say that because many even this part don't do it well, but many do this well. But where this becomes powerful is then identifying, okay, so what is it that drives these results for me? Sometimes it can be analytical. Like with companies, what we do is it's analytical, it's data. We look at top performers, what are they driving? So you can actually use data. Sometimes you just use common sense in your own business, right? So, for example, in this business, there were two things that drove this. One was how many what we call customer review meetings they had, focusing on assessing what they did well, where they could improve. So the meeting with the customer, just focusing on what the customer, not to sell them something new, to ask them how they're doing and how they can improve. And how many referral requests they made, because when they make referral requests, it shows that you actually create a better connection with the customer themselves too. The actual standards don't matter for this conversation because you have to create the standards that are right for you. The idea is the act of actually identifying what we control. So the creating that clarity about what we control that drives results. So for example, for new customers, just give another few examples of how this may work. This person broke down these goals into, here's how much I want to do with these customers. Here's how much I want to do with new customers. With new customers, it's how many discovery calls in their business. 3 for 3 meant that they were A+, that defined this. Again, the actual items don't matter. The point is what we control. How many new reach outs we had. They want to publish an article and get speaking engagements. So how many strategic partner conversations are going to be driving this? And then breaking it into what they're going to accomplish month to month. The key point here is this idea that we say we're defining what we're doing at the quarter, and we're turning that into not just a goal, but here is what I know is fully in my control that I can actually do. And if I can just do what these things are in my control, that feeling of control not only increases the likelihood of my success, but what else does that feeling of control do? That feeling of control makes me more relaxed. That feeling of control makes me less stressed. That feeling of control makes me enjoy the process of following the journey much more. So a lot of stuff on this page. So I don't want to go because it's a little bit dense in terms of all the words. But the key thing to remember is clarity about the goals, clarity about what we control, but then tying belief, energy, and confidence to it. So let me just stop here, get comments, get thoughts. Joaquin, if you want to add anything, you can do too. But if anyone else has any comments or thoughts.
Yeah, I think I have one comment. I know you're going to talk about win the week later on, but I think personally with my team, something that I found very, very powerful in my one-on-one interactions with everyone is that before this methodology, we used to focus on the results. So I would focus with a salesperson and say, you had to grow X% this quarter, month, week. Either it worked out or it didn't. But then we didn't have really a very structured conversation. We talked about, the economy and things like that. But now my conversations with salespeople have been very, very positive because now we're focusing on the standards themselves first. Things we agreed as a team that we can control, things that we agreed were, what was the A+ standard. So now you can talk to your team or individually, if you do this for your individually, is I knew I can control this. This was a standard, and I know that this is going to ultimately drive the result that I want, either monetary or whatever it might be. So now you can have an honest conversation on why the standard was achieved or not, and then what you're going to do next week. So again, I think the enjoyment, the positivity that I've had with my team focusing on standards instead of results has, really had a positive impact here in the business.
And Joaquin, the thing that Joaquin is very good at this in terms of not being, if you haven't met a standard, it's more about let's learn together how we can improve because we know we control this, rather than I'm beating you up because you didn't meet a standard. I mean, that is really important. And for many of you who are independent, so basically you're playing the role of Joaquin and the person who's reporting to with yourself. It's really your self-talk with yourself as you're reviewing yourself. That is also very important because if you're going to set standards and when you don't meet them, because you're not going to meet your standards all the time, by definition, no one's going to be. So you can either beat yourself up and say, that do this, I always mess up on this. Or you use that as a learning experience to basically say, okay, I knew I can control this. This didn't happen. What did I learn from this to improve? And this process week by week becomes more of a learning process. Scott.
I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm curious on how you use this process to support people when they reach their obstacles. A cancer diagnosis, taking care of a loved one that distracts them from their goals, the somatic kind of approach of the issues that happen in real life and where that falls. How is that managed? I know the answer from my perspective as a coach. I've been coaching for many years. I have a corporate background as well. But I'm wondering about your process and where you help people navigate that piece. It seems like that has to be part of the culture approach, not just an individual approach, but you also have real world goals we have to hit for the company to survive and thrive. So where does that intersection happen in your process here?
Yeah, my guess is frankly, so like, my guess is that's really where people like you would actually be valuable, right? That's this, because at the end of the day, those types of situations are not solved by process, right? Those types of situations are solved by culture, by humanity, by being just a person that basically says, look, I know we had these things on paper, but you're facing a different situation. And given that situation, we're going to just throw it out for the next 2 months. And here's the guy, Scott, that I want you to, like, he's a resource. He's got expertise in this area. So like what we do is a process to maximize results, but we're really relying on humanity to deal with situations like what you've described is my honest answer to that. And hopefully when you build cultures, like when you're working with an organization, when someone comes and works with us, what's the first page that I showed? The first page is we transform results while helping people greatly enjoy the process. And so someone who works with us is someone who by definition values those two things and so can deal with those types of situations. But I wouldn't, like the types of situations that you described, I wouldn't rely on our process to solve. I would actually say sometimes you may have to throw this process out for a couple of months and just be a human to your team and to that person help them.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. That's great.
And so Joaquin talked about the win the week process, because that's an important. So what we talked about here on the win the quarter in the example, there are these three parts. There's a North Star, there's a big picture, right? We want to be crystal clear about our big picture. The only thing that matters is it be short and internalized with you. Like if you have a 5-sentence North Star, that's probably too much detail. Like how do you narrow it to 1 or 2 sentences? It's something that's a little bit different, and you believe in it and you energize with it. So there's no right or wrong beyond that. If by definition, if it's clear, if it's simple, if you believe in it, if you're energized by it, and again, if you're part of a team, if they all have that, then you check off that first part. Goals are basic goal setting 101, right? So there's nothing substantially different in terms of them being smart. For companies, we say beyond financial, you have goals relating to customers and relating to people. And by the way, when you have people goals, again, that hopefully builds a type of culture that then can address some of the like situations that what Scott brought up and make the right decisions as a leader, and that you're energized by it. And then you set the standards in terms of this is ultimately that the standards part is the different part, which is key, which is I'm identifying what it is that I control that drives the results that we can achieve. And that is what builds confidence. That is what builds conviction. Joaquin is a confident person by nature. I've known him for a long time. But having gone through this process, I'll let you say that too. Okay, I think your confidence level in terms of as a team we're going to win has gone up because and your team members too. Just they feel like we're now in control of this process.
Absolutely. And I think, John, again, the standards, I think, are the keys to do it with your team. So in my case, as you know, the standards came from client interviews, given the type of the business and the goal that I had. And once I shared that with the team, we were crystal clear on the standards, but then as a team, we came up with what A+ is for us. And that buy-in from the people created a much more positive atmosphere in making sure that we believed that the goal was achievable rather than just, a dream or a quarterly goal that as a business you need to have.
Exactly. And so now I'm going to share the part that's the trickiest for many of you in this audience. I don't know all of you, but the reason I say that is that it's probably as powerful as any other part of our process. But a reason for it is that we do it in a corporate environment where you have these one-on-one conversations at these team meetings. So if you are part of a team, then you can just follow through on what I just say exactly. If you're not part of a team, what I would strongly advise is look at what I'm going to share. This is what we call win the week, and incorporate it yourself. Like it could be with someone else on the team. You guys do it together. It could be on your own. It requires a little more discipline if you're doing it on your own. But it's an extremely powerful process where every Monday morning, it could be other days too, but typically it happens on Monday morning. So at the end of the previous week, we identify what are outcomes, the key outcomes. It's not about writing 20 things. The idea here is that we don't want to micromanage people. People go every day and drive their results themselves. But what are the 3 or 4 key outcomes this week that will move us meaningfully forward toward our goals? All right. So I'll give you just an example of what an outcome is. Like an outcome could be I'm advancing this many relationships forward with a clear next step. That's an outcome. It's get this many responses from my messages. So an activity is I'm going to make 20 calls. That's not what we want to focus on. We want to focus on what is it that is going to happen as a result of the calls that is the outcome for this week that we can focus on. And then what happens every week, again, typically on Monday mornings in these one-on-ones or in team meetings, but this is the part that some of you who are independent and work on your own, I highly recommend you do this on your own because it can work on your own too, where you ask these 4 questions. The first is, how did I do or how did we do if we're doing it as a team? Like how did, no judgment, it's not about beating ourselves, it's about learning from the past week. We identified these 4 things, which were our key outcomes. Again, outcomes on activities, they're tied to the win the quarter. And we say, we did well, we didn't do well, here's what we learned. Second is, am I on track or are we on track? Which means, let's say I have a quarterly goal of X. I don't want to realize 2 weeks before the end of the quarter whether I've achieved X or not. So every week, there's this process of everyone in the team checking off on, yeah, we're on track. Yeah, I feel still very good that I'm going to achieve it. Or if I don't, let's talk about how we can actually address and solve it. How will I move forward this week? How will we move forward this week as a team? What are the 3 or 4 things? And then what should be fixed, if any? Which means, are there some problems that we should brainstorm on together? And the rule we have in these meetings is that these meetings focus on these 4 questions. So with the like the other stuff, the firefighting stuff, all the other stuff, we can have other meetings to focus on them. We go very systematic. And then we commit that we're going to come into this meeting bringing our own positive energy and elevating other people's positive energy. If it's a team meeting, if it's a one-on-one, elevating the other person's energy. And that's important too. A lot of what I'm talking about, all the blue or most of the blue on this page is about emotion. And ultimately what we're doing here is you want to have this process be about learning, improving, getting better. We're not going to ever go on a straight path toward our goals. You can zigzag your way through it, but you want to every week get yourself back on track again, get yourself learn, move, be adaptive and nimble as you go forward. Hemant.
Yeah. Have you ever come across any AI agent who can work with independent consultants on the weekly progress reviews?
So we're actually building one ourselves too.
Okay.
But what you can, I'm sure what you can, like actually, I know you can actually even take the regular AI tools out there and just walk through that. And it's just going to create something like, because that's basically what we're doing with our technology. We're actually building things off that's going to be working with you. The challenge with it, though, is that it doesn't solve the biggest part of the individual part. And the biggest part of the individual part is accountability to someone. So with the AI agent, they can lead you, maybe ask you questions, where they can do things like that, and kind of we're working on kind of building up. There's a lot of detail around that in terms of what we're doing. Hopefully, 5-6 months, I can point you. We call it Jovi, the agent, but there's stuff we do which is exciting. But there's something about an individual working with another individual that's very powerful. We don't do coaching, but like if we one day do coaching, that would be like there's power in that, there's impact in that. So like if you are like my strong recommendation to people in this group who whether they don't have a coach or whether they don't have you don't have to hire a formal coach, you can even work with each other and create a team because that kind of accountability creates a lot of power. Linto,
Hi, Ron. Oh,
hello.
actually, I just remember now. There is one book which relate to the insights which you shared today. I think it's the four disciplines of execution. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, okay. And I think there are tools related to provided by that book for this the same thing which we can do for the execution of strategy.
exactly. No, it's a great book. Now we're biased. We think we've gone beyond what they've done. I know them very well, so they're friends of mine too. But
Great.
we've done some things that are go beyond just the execution. But it's a great process. I only speak highly of what they do. Anwar,
Hello, Ron. Thank you
hello.
for the presentation. So my question is regarding the vision and the standards. How do we set the standards for a large team? Do we settle for the minimum? Do we do average team average, or we set challenging standards?
That's a really, really good question. So really, really good question. So the way that I recommend is that you first of all identify what the best are doing, like what is different there. And then we set it for the best. And let me tell you why we do that. Because we're not setting results goals. So from when I set results goals, I set results goals based on things that we don't control. Some people control certain things, some people don't control other things. But standards we control. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Like we're working with this company. They're a big home services company. They got like 900 salespeople selling home services equipment, and we have found there are three things in a customer call that lead to better results, and they're all very simple things. You'd be surprised at like why wouldn't people do it? When you look at top performers, it's when you go in, you take some time to set an agenda with the customer. You ask certain types of questions from the customer, and then you tell a story about what your background is connected to the company. So what it is isn't important, but the point is that's what we're talking about when we're talking about A+. It's not about a result that says you have to swim a certain amount above, faster than something else. It's something that by definition everyone can do. So going back to Joaquin's example, where email response time. Joaquin, you can talk about how you guys came up with that. But that's, to me, it's like you pick the A+, you pick the top standard for what that should be.
Yeah, this is a great question, Anwar. I had the exact same issue in my mind of how to set the standards, but this is what I found. That once the team saw the data in terms of what our clients actually value. And that standard, pretty much every client, for example, said that email response was very important. Pretty much everyone got aligned with doing the absolutely very best on that standard, because now they actually believe that standard was going to drive results. If we didn't go through that process of discovery and setting the standards, top down and doing the client journey and the client surveys, I think people would have been skeptical on what the standard was going to be. Some people would have said, look, maybe they wouldn't tell me, but they would think, email response rate is not that important for my clients, so 6 hours is fine. But once they saw in their own eyes from our clients what they valued, I think everybody's really trying to achieve the very best.
And this idea of what we control is huge here. I mean, like this is the one thing to remember in everything that we're talking about by definition. So if you don't control it, by definition, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you control. So the idea is that if we have defined, if Joaquin in his business, he's defined that sending an email response in X amount of time is the best, and people fully control that. So if they don't have the tools to control that, then that's not a good standard. But if everyone has the tools, if people can control it, then we should set standards to be at the very top. It doesn't mean from a results perspective, everyone's going to have the same goals. There's going to be some differences, but standards, we should aim for A+. And that's the foundation of everything that we talked about. Safwan, Alfredo.
My question to you, Ron, is, and probably to Joaquin as well, is how much documenting is needed to actually keep track of the progress? I feel like it's a lot of data that needs to be tracked. So I'm wondering in practicality, how does it work?
So this is the trickiest question, right? I mean, this is the trickiest question when I kind of started my presentation, right? Which I said, and partly you guys will answer me maybe 3 months from now, because more with companies, like if I take a Joaquin world, well, in the Joaquin world, there's a lot of data that has to be captured. People don't capture it. There's a group within the company that capture it, right? So like at an individual level, they're not capturing any data. The data is being captured. And with all our clients, it's the same way, right? So there's a lot of data that goes beyond this process. But for individuals, so if you're part of an organization, I would say absolutely you go through the same thing. You go through, and there's data that you have to be looking at, data driven, etc. If you're looking at it for yourself as an individual, you need to keep it simple. Like from my perspective, if you're doing it as an individual, I wouldn't pick more than 2 or 3 things that I just pick and I say, here are the 2 or 3 standards that in my world drive the results that I want to get. Like something, it could be if I'm going to get this many meetings, or I'm going to send this many reach outs, I'm going to ask every one of my customers for referrals, whatever it is, like whatever that standard is, it could be something totally different. My sense is that in your world, for the individual practitioners among you, I would not track a lot of things. So I think that the experience that Joaquin is going with his team, or our clients go with their team, when there's an organization to look at a lot of data, will be different at an individual level, because otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy. I wouldn't pick more than 3 standards max to look at, especially as you start out this process. I don't know, Joaquin, if you have any perspectives different.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, based on maybe my background and personality, I find it having a discussion with the team and trying to convince them on the standards, having data obviously helps a lot, right? Because we're on the same page, we're hearing from clients and from our own data what is valuable. But, and again, our systems and processes capture all that data. But I agree, if you're doing it individually, I think 3 standards would be the maximum.
Yeah, I mean, if I said, like, here's the way that I would really simplify it, if I was sitting, like if I'm sitting in as an individual practitioner, and I say, I'm going to just come back to this basic slide that says, how can I put what came from today into practice? I would just very simply say, let me first of all make sure I define what's on the right-hand side. Like I'm just crystal clear about that. And then some of you check, I'm already there. I know exactly what it is. Some others of you say, yeah, actually, I should focus a little bit more on the right-hand side too, right? Like just say, what is it that what is it that I control there? Then I would just do one thing each on each of these three things. On the vision, I would say take the next quarter and say for the next quarter, for the goals that I want to achieve, what are 2 or 3 things that I control that help me get there? I wouldn't do more than 3. Like 2 is even maybe better. Like I just say, what are 2 or 3 things that I control that fully in my control, that if I do these things, this will drive my results better. Maybe it's just I'm going to spend X number of hours on focused work each week. It could be different things for different people, right? Like, so what, but just pick 2 or 3 standards that you control and then just track those. Like say, like for the next 3 months, I'm going to track those things that I control and say, if I can control this, then the results will take care of themselves. So that's the one thing I would do under vision. Under execution, the one thing I would do is just be mindful of enjoying the process block by block. Like the thing that I told you in terms of just elevating your enjoyment is it requires practice. We do training on it. It requires skills, but it can absolutely be learned. And just say, I'm going to mindfully enjoy myself more block by block, and then tie that to excellence. This idea of excellence and enjoyment together becomes magical. And then on growth, I'm going to be mindful each day of just saying, what did I learn from doing these 2 things, right? Like what if I identify 2 or 3 standards, what did I like? How do we progress? Is there anything that I could do better? Enjoyment, could I have enjoyed a little bit more? Excellence, could I have enjoyed excellence more? If I just do these things in simplicity, now obviously once you get to the level of a company and what Joaquin is doing and all the details there, all of that is great. And I'm not saying don't do all of that, because the more probably better, but you also don't want to overwhelm yourself. If I just take this one page and I'm doing those 3 things, again, just pick 2 or 3 things for the next quarter from a standards perspective, work on enjoyment and excellence, and then just keep thinking every day, you will, this formula is undefeated. If you elevate the left-hand side of this formula, you will elevate the right-hand side of the formula, which is your results and the enjoyment of it. Alfredo.
Yes, and I am an executive coach and I work mostly on leadership. And what I find is that even though you might well be mindful of enjoying the process, there are a lot of soft skills that hinder you from doing that. How do you work on that? Because those are specific things, very individual things. How do you include the development of soft skills in terms of getting results, of enjoying the process? And do you get, I mean, and that probably this is more for Joaquin also. Do you work also on soft skills? Do you get into that?
Yes. Yeah, so give me an example of a soft skill. And the answer is yes, but give me an example and let's work through it together. So what's an example?
For example, people who might be in sales who are afraid of rejection.
Yeah.
And that is an unconscious reaction.
Yeah. So it is. So let's take that one, because that's a great one. Because it's one of the biggest benefits that we've seen in this program, where you take people in sales and typically, so I'll give you a data point, not to brag, but because it's important to what you brought up. We just did a sales training for more than 800 people in a company. And the comment that I got was that I expected, like every other training, like some people say yes, some people say no. And the comment that the SVP gave me was that he said, I'm not exaggerating, we did not get one negative comment, and we got the people getting positive. And the reason was that so one of the things that told me before, our programs have a lot of role play in it, in the interaction part. And one of the things that I've heard at the beginning was that these guys hate doing role plays because they have to do it in front of people. You get scared. If you ever, And what we said was, that's okay. We're still going to do it, but we do it in a different way. And so what we do in our role plays, let's take rejection for as an example. We role play this idea that says you're the salesperson, the other person is the customer. And the only thing that the salesperson is told, the customer is not told what we're telling the salesperson. What we tell the customer is, you're going to be mean and you're going to reject this person and you're going to be bad. The only thing the salesperson is that we don't care. We're not going to judge you in this role play by your skills. Like, your skills are utterly irrelevant. We're going to judge you by how much you enjoyed the process that comes out and kind of elevated enjoyment around you. And it's an amazing exercise when that happens. It just totally turns this whole idea about rejection as pain into this idea that says, I'm not here, like, if rejection happens, I'm going to enjoy this process. But then what happens is when you then go back and ask the customer and the salesperson to talk about it, and the people who are observing to talk about it, it's not just that the salesperson did much better enjoying themselves because they were told to enjoy themselves, but the exact thing we told them not to focus on, which is the skills and how good they were in selling, they actually did dramatically better. Why? Because it comes back to what I said at the beginning, this idea of loving what you do and enjoying what you do. And the comparison, what the comments that we guys said is that, usually these sales training programs are focusing on, like, how do I close the deal, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? And we have some of that, a little bit of that. But so much of it is more important, is just changing the dynamic of what's in here and basically saying, look, I don't control if the customer rejects me or not. I don't even control whether I really enjoy the process or not, because again, we're not telling you to really enjoy it. We're saying pursue it. So I'm saying, even if in your heart, you're stressed, your heart is pounding, boom, 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 all you're doing is we're saying you're doing your best, you're pursuing. You can say at the end of it that I gave my best to enjoy the process. And it creates a transformation. Now and then you have like leaders like Joaquin to kind of push it forward. But this idea of enjoyment, the process when it's hard, and you can take the same example that I just shared in terms of our role plays in your own lives. Like next time you're faced, just try it out yourself. Like, next time you're faced with a very stressful situation, just ask yourself, I'm not going to be jumping up and down, but how can I get a little enjoyment even out of this process to really solve this? Joaquin, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think this makes sense, Ron, what you said. And maybe another point that I wanted to add, maybe as a leader, is that when I had the conversation with the team, I told them, look, we are almost in the same shoes, because for me as a leader, I'm the ultimately responsible, for example, the sales goal. And it's much easier for me to just say, this is a sales goal, achieve it, and I'll see you next week. But I also have to change my mindset. I have to believe that the standards, again, without being repetitive, of responding to an email very quick is going to drive sales. So as a leader, I'm committed to the team that I'm just going to talk about email response rate. And yes, we need to make sure that we're going through the goal, etc. But we're also on the same page that we're going to focus on the standards and also the enjoyment part. I have to be, as a leader, be part of that, right? And talk about the standards, enjoying the conversations that I have with my own team, the one-on-one meetings, regardless of what's going on. So I think the enjoyment part is something that we have to individually work on, but the leader obviously has a lot of responsibility there.
Exactly.
How do you work, for example, toxicity, extremely directive leadership styles?
Sorry, I just want to say there's 5 minutes left, so Ron, you manage the time, please.
So I'll give a quick answer to Alfredo's question, because it's my answer to everything ultimately, is that you focus on A+ in what you control. We deal with a lot of those situations, right?
Okay.
Where it's if I'm a leader and one of my team members has toxic, that's easy, right? I can make a decision. But what when it's the opposite, right? Like I'm a team member and my leader has a toxic. And the answer I give them is very, very simple. It says, let's say the leader is going to be there. It says, I say, all you can do is be A+ in what you control. And ultimately, you're going to decide one of two things. Either you want to be in this organization, so you want to be A+ in what you control, and ultimately, sometimes magic happens even in that situation. Or sometimes for some people, it's been A+ in what we control, frankly, is moving to a different team and moving to a different organization. I want to thank everyone here. So unlike a lot of other people who come and speak to you, I don't have anything to sell you, right? So the reason I'm here, I was a friend of Sunny. Sunny asked me to present, and I'm here hopefully to serve, hopefully it's been valuable. I will share what I've sent to Safa. But again, I want to end with kind of this make things simple idea. And again, from this make things simple idea is that there's a lot that I shared, and I'll send the detail. The Victory Blueprint is great. There's a lot of detail there. If you have any questions, always reach out to me. If you want to talk more, reach out to me. Feel free to share my information with everyone. But at the end of the day, make it simple. And so I want to end by just repeating something I said, which says, if you just do these 3 things from today's session, again, take Q3 as an example, because we're going to getting close to it. And for Q3, tell yourself, what's one big goal that I really want to get better at? And for that big goal, what are 2 or 3 standards? Don't do more than 3. What are 2 or 3 things that I control? And what does A+ look like them? And I'm going to go for these 3 months, I'm going to really focus on these 2 or 3 things and just to become A+ there. Then on the idea of the execution, I'm going to do what I said we do in our role play with the salespeople that says, you're in a situation, the person is rejecting you, the person by definition is mean, whatever, but you're going to pursue enjoyment of the process. And so for these 3 months, just keep working on your ability to bring enjoyment and excellence together up. The research is really clear on this. Excellence and enjoyment aren't trade-offs. They amplify each other. So as you enjoy, you excel more. As you excel more, you enjoy more. And then the third thing is just every day ask yourself, how can I improve in the first 2 things that I said? Like, how can I get better at the standards? How can I get better at the vision results? So that's all I have for you. Hopefully it's been useful. And I'd be very happy to hear back from anyone if they wanted more advice, more thoughts, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ron, for today's session. I think it's very inspiring that we should push ourselves to reach excellence, and it is within our reach. It's not something that is reserved only to a special elite of people, but if we do the work and put in the work with the passion, we can get there. Thank you, Joaquin, for your participation and your contribution. That was very useful and insightful. I put down your LinkedIn, Ron, so people can connect with you. You guys feel free to save the chat if you want so that you have the links for everyone. So next week we will have Carl, who will be sharing about revealing the gold within. I think it's going to be a wonderful reflective session, different from today's, but one that you don't want to miss. Thank you again, Ron. Thank you, everyone, for participating. See you next week, same time, same link. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Anwar. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure. See you next
Glad
week.
you made it today.
Yeah. Thanks again.
You were not interrupted by work? It was fine?
Once.
Okay.
And I'm happy it's just once.
Okay, that's good. All right, so it's the same link every week. So if you want to put it in your calendar, join every week. We have a different speaker, a different topic. So up to you.
Sure, I'll take the time as many times as it's possible. I'll join. That's for sure.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Sama.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.